Hello guys and welcome to episode 64 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam, and today we are exploring the ancient and mysterious puzzles of Monument Valley and Monument Valley 2. And pretty much since October, I've been completely addicted to the Pokemon trading card game Pocket, as I guess most of you are if you're in the Beat Your Backlog Discord server. There's daily posts of people sharing what cards they are and aren't getting there. And like with most addictions, I've realized that this one is not really very good for me. The content rollout has been pretty stagnant since release, with only a few sets being released, but no new challenges or updates to the game other than that. Therefore, to wean myself off of the game, I decided I should try and play other mobile games on my phone to prevent me opening up the Pocket app. However, with the mobile game genre, this is easier said than done. Most games on the Google Play Store adopt the same free-to-play monetization that Pocket does, and I really do not want to substitute one addictive game for another. Therefore, I decided to search for great mobile games that had no microtransactions, no roadmaps, and no random rolls, and one game series that kept popping up over and over again was the Monument Valley series. So I decided to download the game, it costed me about €1.99 and play it. And as you may have guessed by this review, because it's about Monument Valley and Monument Valley 2, I really liked the first game enough to download the second one. So what is Monument Valley? Did it get me off my Pocket addiction? And is it worth your time to play? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. But before we get into the episode, I would like to remind you that you can support the podcast on Patreon. If you do, you will gain access to all of my content 24 hours early, and you will unlock the Beat Your Backlog bonus podcast called Beat Your Bonus, which will be filled up with exclusive podcast episodes only for Patreon supporters. If you're interested in supporting my one-man show, head over to patreon.com/beatyourbacklog or click the link in the description of this episode. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, Hoppel, Kazapi, and Gaming in the Wild. And if you decide to support, thank you very much. You can also follow for free on there if you want to get my content as soon as it goes live for everyone. And yeah, Monument Valley, so it was published by an indie studio called Us2 Games on iOS and then later on Android in 2014, which is kind of crazy to think about that this game's already 11 years old. When the game released, it gained some critical acclaim with a 89 out of 100 review score on Metacritic, and it even recouped its cost of development within just 2 weeks of its release. From a gameplay standpoint, Monument Valley is pretty simple. You play as a character called Ida, who is on a quest for forgiveness in Monument Valley, a valley that is littered with ancient puzzle-like monuments that she has to solve to continue her journey. And doing Googling around for this game, I think there is an actual Monument Valley in the US where they have these like very kind of like monolithic sort of cliff faces and mountains in there. So I wonder if this is based off of that or if it's just a coincidence that they're both called Monument Valley. But yeah, to solve the monuments, you have to have two very simple inputs as your options. So the first is tapping on one of the platforms of the monument. This will make Ida move to it, and she more or less moves in sort of not a straight line, but directly to wherever you tap. And the second is rotating or moving parts of the monuments that allow it, which can be done by touching the segment that can be rotated or moved and dragging it up and down or side to side with your finger. And that's basically all of the inputs you have. So this game is great. I actually mostly played the game when I was on the bus on the way to work, because one thing I really don't like about like mobile gaming is I hate having to sit with my phone in landscape mode. Like I think that's just like I don't know, I just don't like it. Like if I'm playing games on my phone, it's a weird thing. I would prefer if people didn't know I was playing games. So the whole game is in portrait, and like I said, you can play pretty much everything with one thumb. You just hold the phone. If you're watching a YouTube video, you hold it kind of portrait and you just move everything in the middle. It's really like well laid out and designed that you can just use it with one finger, which is really nice. Which is funny because last year when I injured my hand, I was looking for a game to play with one hand, and it never crossed my mind really to try a mobile game, because obviously lots of mobile games are designed to just be played with one hand. So yeah, if that's something that you're also a bit like me, this game does it perfectly. Like if you want to play games on your phone but you don't want people to know that you're playing games on the phone if you're on the bus, then yeah, definitely check it out. Also, I played it a lot more, the second one actually, when I was putting my baby to sleep. So usually how we would put my baby to sleep is we would sit in a rocking chair and rock her to sleep, and she would sleep on me for a little bit. And then it was also perfect to be like, okay, I can just have one hand on her and just play with the one hand. So that's a really cool aspect of the game for me anyway. And yeah, and the best way to sort of describe the puzzles in the game is if you imagine the very famous sort of like painting slash illustration slash sketches of MC Escher's Relativity, where it's like the black and white images of all of the staircases that kind of intertwine, and they're all like, it's like kind of like reality bending, where some staircases are like leading into each other and stuff like that. Like if you imagine those mixed with a Rubik's Cube. So it's as if you could take those pictures and rotate them and manipulate them to connect all of the different staircases into one long line so that you could go from one side of the image to the other. That's basically how I would describe this game. And most of the puzzles are designed around walkways or bridges that seem to lead to nowhere, with your exit, which is usually a doorway, just being out of reach. So you go in and you're like, okay, looking at the architecture, there's no like sort of logical way that I could reach to the door. However, after rotating or raising a section of the level, the architecture of the level would change, creating like an optical illusion and new pathways that were not there. So again, if you're watching the YouTube video, it might be that like two bridges are facing away from each other, like two sort of like like bridge ends are facing away. But if you rotate them, they'll turn and touch each other, and then you can walk across it. So it's very, very cool, especially the first time you see it. And yeah, I think the puzzles in this game are a masterclass in architecture, so much so that I actually suggested the game to my sister and brother-in-law, who are both architects, because I was like, yeah, this is like such a cool game. And it's basically all just, the game is just manipulating the architecture of the levels and the architecture of this monument. They loop into each other, or at times loop around each other, and though at first glance the visuals look quite simple, there are layers and layers of complexity to these puzzles, where you really think, sometimes you go in and you just think, okay, this is just completely simple, but as you move it and change it, you just like, wow, this level is very, very complex. One example of this was my favorite level in the game, which really reminds me of a music box. So when you first enter the puzzle, all you see is kind of a box with 4 towers, and the first thing is like, okay, how do I open it? How do I interact with this box? Then when you manage to kind of prise the lid open, you realize that each side of the box has its own puzzle that you have to solve. And again, they sort of like a music box fall open one at a time. And it felt very, very satisfying to solve each puzzle one at a time and slowly see how they sort of interconnected, until by the end of the level, the box is completely opened up like a blooming flower, and you're sort of on top of it, ready to move on to the next level. Really, really great level. If you go to the written review of this podcast, there's a screenshot there, and how it kind of starts off and how it ends. It's very, very, very beautiful. And again, we'll get onto it a little bit, but just how the game looks is just stunning. And talking about the puzzles, the best part of the game for me is that I feel like the puzzles have like a Goldilocks, like just right level of difficulty for me. So they take a little bit of observation, a little bit of experimentation to solve, but they are not so difficult that you need to break out a pen and paper to solve them. In addition, I love how quick they are. So again, perfect for this sort of mobile, you're playing in small bursts as you're on the public transport, if you're on a bus, if you sat down waiting for something at like the doctor's appointment, you can just break it out and play it, because each level usually takes between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on how good you are at solving puzzles, of course. And it makes the game feel very fast and very snappy, and it's, of course, like I just said, perfect for mobile play. And I really like the pacing of the puzzles, because it also helped the pacing of the story for what the story is. Because as you progress through the levels, you will be introduced to some unusual looking crow people that are just kind of people that look like crows. And they sort of walk around, and they sort of walk up and down some of the levels and will caw at you. And they don't let you pass if you kind of come face to face with them. So they add a little bit of difficulty of like, okay, how do I manage the kind of pathing of the AI versus how do I shift one of the crow people to maybe a different platform that I don't need to be on, so that then I can progress behind them. It adds like a cool, it adds a very cool sort of aspect to the game that isn't just, okay, I just need to maneuver the architecture. It's like, okay, I also have to manage these blockers to help me get around and move the architecture to get me into the next part of the level, which is very cool. And by the end of the game, there is a very satisfying conclusion on who the crow people are and what your relationship is to them. And finally, Monument Valley is an absolute stunner of a game. The simplistic architecture used for the game's puzzles is amplified by its gorgeous colouring of each level and additional oriental flair to its building tops. It's very, very pretty. Like, it's a gorgeous game. Like, again, I love the simplicity, but I love how vibrant the colours are, how they contrast so much with sort of the sort of, I don't know, sometimes the architecture looks very like brutalist because it's very grey and white and just simplified, like just like block slab, block slab, block slab. But then they have these really bright colours, and then on top of some of the architecture, they have these sort of curved, almost like tulip looking like sort of roofs that give it like this oriental flair, which is very, very cool. It's just a very unusual mix of different sort of different architecture. Like if you are watching on the on YouTube, I'm gonna play some gameplay now just whilst I talk. Yeah, you can see it's just very kind of concrete and very grey, but it has this bright colours, very simplistic backgrounds that have just like it's just like a one colour with like a gradient on it. There are some very black and white levels. It's just a very, very pretty game, and it has a photo mode as well on the phone, which I used a lot. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of photo modes, and love that it had it in this game. Again, go and look at the written review for the game, because I have a lot of screenshots there. Also on my Instagram and other social media, I'll be putting up a lot of screenshots. And yeah, we've kind of moved on in the video at least to Monument Valley 2. But yeah, no, it's just a gorgeous game, and I love that it had a photo mode in it. And yeah, you can see if you're watching the video, they just released on Nintendo Switch on April 15th. I'm recording this on April 20th, and it says Monument Valley 3 is also coming to the Switch later, I think in summer, which was a shame because I haven't played Monument Valley 3 yet, but I'm probably going to wait until the Switch release. But that's saying that it's going to come out in the summer. So yeah, very, very pretty game. Then, yeah, so like I said, I enjoyed the game so much that in its kind of 1.5 hour playthrough, the time just absolutely flew by. There are 10 equally great levels to overcome, and I actually managed to finish the entire game in one day on my transit to and from work. So yeah, so like on a bad day, it takes me about 45 minutes to get from my flat to the office, both ways. So that, yeah, it's an hour and a half. So I managed to finish the game in one go. And yeah, I enjoyed it so much that I decided to buy the Forgotten Shores DLC, which added 8 additional levels to the game, which was also great and just very nice to just keep playing, because I think that night I had to put my daughter to bed and I beat those 8 levels while she was asleep on me. So yeah, if you want something fast, it's a great game to play. And then, yeah, if we move on then to Monument Valley 2. Again, this game was first released on iOS and Android back in 2017. And thanks to a recent Nintendo Switch Direct, which we just talked about, it will be releasing on Switch and maybe the Switch 2 later this year. I actually, when I wrote this review, we didn't know when the Switch 2 was coming out. I think I must have wrote it just after this first Direct. And when it released, it had a 83 out of 100 on Metacritic, with Polygon's Colin Campbell saying it is an accomplished, charming game, but it stops just short of greatness, and goes on to say that it successfully replicates the original's charm and vibrancy. And here I completely agree with Colin's thoughts. I do think the game is pretty much more Monument Valley, because it has the same puzzles that look like they're drawn by Esther, but with I would say like kind of pastels instead of pencils. That's I think a very good way to sum it up. And the game still has this very easy to use inputs and the same style of level design, but in this game you don't have the crow people, unfortunately. However, there are some new additions to the game, so most noticeably the fact that you have 2 characters to guide around the obstacles of Monument Valley. You play as a mother and daughter team of Ro and her child. The child doesn't get given a name. Yeah, I did really like this change, and the added complexity of using one character to open doors or flip switches for the other character to move through. So yeah, it's very much like a lot of the levels, there will be like parallel routes, and sometimes as Ro you have to remove blockers for the child to move along the route until eventually you both perfectly exit together, which is very, very satisfying to do. And yeah, furthermore, I thought the mother and daughter pairing made the story feel much more impactful than the original. And yeah, as I've been talking about, I have a young daughter at home, so maybe the game's theme of a mother letting go of a child, sending it out into the big bad world and hoping that their child finds their own way, are a bit more relevant to me as a parent or to any parent than the original story. So it definitely made. Okay, I think her name is Ro, or is it Bo? Because I have two names here. I think it's Ro, but yeah, we'll stick with Ro because I already said it. So it made Ro definitely feel more relatable to me than Ida did from the original game. In addition, the base game has 14 levels to complete compared to the original's 10, so there is a bit more content here for you to enjoy. I especially liked level 9, which is called Menatol, which is, if I go back to, or you can see my notes, if I go back to here, they actually just showed it on the video. So yeah, it's basically this level that is, each section of the level is built within each other. So as you start the level, it sort of zooms out, and it reminds me of, like, there was this trend a few years ago on social media where an artist would show you a picture and it might be someone like a room with someone watching a TV, and then they would zoom out on the picture, and then you would see the house, like it would zoom out through their window and you would see the house with them watching the TV in the room, and then they would zoom out again, and then it would show you the town that the house is in, and then they would zoom out again and it would show you the city that the town is in, and then they would zoom out again and it would show you the countryside, and they would just keep zooming out, and eventually they'd be so far away that there was no way that you could see the original image. That's what this level is like. So the level starts off zoomed in and zooms all the way back out, and you're on the very outer layer. Like if you imagine it's like the Shrek sort of what's it called, like the Shrek. So here it is actually on the video. Yeah, you don't really see that much of it, but you imagine the Shrek saying of like onions have many layers, right? You're on the outer layer, and then you work your way into the core of the onion, or of the I don't know, the apple, I guess. But no, onion is a better kind of example. Yeah, and as you keep doing it, a new color is sort of introduced, and again, because the game looks so vibrant and colorful, it just looks amazing as like these very vibrant and saturated colors sort of contrast with each other as you kind of move in. Very, very cool level design, and again, just how the whole level works together is just like, it's just a masterclass of design, I would say, and not just design, game design, but also like architectural design, because it just works. Like it's such a cool level, and it's one that I'll always remember just because of how visually stunning it is too. So going on with the review. So I just described about that, and yeah, it's very I wrote like it's basically very hypnotizing to play this level, as the colors and patterns, almost like a mandala, like where they, which is actually something that they add into this level, into this game, is you can, at the end of the level, you can draw on the screen your own like pattern, and it will create like a mandala that will just keep rotating and rotating, and again, it has that hypnotizing effect to it. It's very, very cool. And yeah, as if you're watching the video, you'll have seen just how gorgeous the game is. It is really a very pretty game, just like the original one. And I do like that they've kind of tweaked the architecture a little bit to give it more sort of a Middle Eastern, like Rajasthani, Moroccan vibe to it. So if you imagine, I don't know, like Aladdin, like the Aladdin movie from Disney, that's kind of how the buildings look like. Again, it's similar to the first, but it's different enough. Like they have more of these kind of patterns in it, like these mandala patterns, which really reminds me of when I was in India, in Rajasthan, of these big kind of sandstone like castles and temples, whatever, which from far away again look very just kind of like blocky brutalism, but then as you get closer you realize that all of the detail that has been like hand carved into them, with like these sort of almost like kind of curved crosses, like screens that you can kind of let light through, but you can't really see through, like because they would want it so that people could spy on each other in these palaces. And yeah, that's very much how the sort of the architecture looks. It's gorgeous. Has a great soundtrack too. I don't think I mentioned the soundtrack of the original, but the soundtrack is it's just very, there's not really necessarily any music, but it just has great atmosphere. And again, especially in this one where the stakes are raised a little bit because you are trying to watch out for your daughter. Like the sounds of like the architecture breaking and shifting makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, because you don't want something bad to happen to your daughter. And the story has a very nice ending. Again, it's about letting go, and going out, letting your child go out into the world and hoping that they come back and that they've come back a better, not a better person, but they've grown on this journey, which is very nice. So that kind of leads us then to the very end of the podcast here, and the question: should you play Monument Valley 1 and 2? And I love playing Monument Valley 1 and 2 on mobile. They are perfectly designed for portrait mode on the phone, and the controls feel intuitive and fun to use. To me, playing these games felt a little like cheating. I got to beat 2 of the best puzzle games ever whilst being on a bus to work, and got an additional review and a podcast to make. You must check out these games. They are cheap to buy on mobile, short and great to play. They both look stunning, as if an MC Escher had created his famous masterpieces in vibrant colours rather than pencil, and both games have a great atmospheric soundtrack. The puzzle designs remind me of kind of like mind-bending, sort of something that you might see in Inception, and they really make the impossible possible in only a way that a video game can. Monument Valley 2 does not have the same wow factor as the first game. The trick to the optical illusion based level design. However, it makes up for it with its more endearing tale about a mother and daughter that any parent will relate to. The game's managed to sate my Pokemon Pocket addiction for a couple of days, but since then I have gone back to ripping packs. And the only reason I did not include Monument Valley in this review is because it is exclusive on Netflix and I do not have a Netflix account. Nevertheless, I will be playing it, Monument Valley, on the Switch. I will be paying the Switch tax for it when it releases in summer, and we'll be playing it there day one, definitely. So if you enjoy, or if you have a Netflix account, you can play these games on mobile for free. You just have to sign into your Netflix account and download them. I think the studio is actually owned by Netflix now. The studio that Us Two, I think we said they were called. So the games are on there, but you can buy the first 2 at least separately on mobile. The third one is still locked to a Netflix account. But yeah, I would say if you do have a Netflix account and you do have a commute to work, you should definitely check them out because you can beat them in a day or two. And it's like I said, to me it felt like a little bit like cheating because, usually when I play a game, it's very much like I have to spend 10, 15 hours on the game and then that kind of like slows down a little bit of the process of making these podcasts because, for me a 10, 15 hour game is like something that probably takes a couple of weeks to make, and then it probably takes me another week to actually produce the podcast and then release it. So this game was really like I could play both of them in 1 week, have the review ready in 1 week, and I've actually had this review sat on the backlog for a while because everything kicked off with the Switch 2, so I had to move some stuff around, and then I started my Nintendo Switch Memories series as well, so that's moved stuff around, so that's why now I'm finally able to review it. And yeah, it just felt like nice to be able to just play these games, play through them. I've even gone back to some of the levels as well, just to be like, I've got 5 minutes, let's just play a level, why not? Just to keep my kind of memory fresh for this review. So no, definitely check them out. They're super affordable. They're great games. Like I said, I think they're some of the best designed games I've ever played, and they're absolutely stunning to look at. And yeah, so guys, that was episode 64 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. I would love to know if you have played Monument Valley 1 and or 2, or if they're still on your backlog. Are you planning to play them on the Switch since they've just released? Are you going to play Monument Valley 3 when it comes to the Switch? Are you getting a Switch 2? I'd also love to know that. And you can let me know if you're a Spotify listener by commenting on the episode below. And if you're listening elsewhere, you can let me know on social media by kind of messaging me on Blue Sky, or you can come and join our Beat Your Backlog Discord server, the link of which will be in the description. And if you are listening to the podcast around its release in kind of mid to end April, and you do have a massive backlog of games to beat, just like I do, why not come and join our game of Beat Your Bingo on the Beat Your Backlog server. There are 25 challenges to play to beat games on your backlog, and if you are first to fill up your bingo card, you could win a fabulous prize. And actually, we got enough people playing now that I unlocked prizes for second and third place as well. So yeah, and I would say it's been going on nearly 3 weeks now, but I would say that it's still very open. There isn't really anyone that I would say is clearly in the lead right now. So yeah, so it's still a good chance to come in and play, and you still, I would say, have the same chance of winning the full bingo card as everyone else does, because yeah, there are 25 challenges to play. People seem to be enjoying it. It's kind of, it's fun seeing what people are playing and how they're strategizing to fill the bingo card. And I've been enjoying it myself. I've only managed to knock off two of the challenges so far. But hopefully I've also strategized and planned out what I'm going to play for the next couple of months to fill the card. So if you're intrigued already, click on the link to the description to the Discord in the description. And if you are interested, I've kind of dropped hints about it a couple of times about the full written review of this game. Head on over to Patreon. The link to that will also be in the description. And speaking of Patreon, if you've enjoyed this episode and would like to show your support, consider joining my Patreon at a $2 or $5 tier. If you do, you will get access to all of my content 24 hours before anyone else and get to access the Patreon exclusive podcast Beat Your Backlog bonus. And a recent episode just went up, so this is the third one now, which is about my Steam wish list. I go through 50 games on my Steam wish list, talking about the games I'm most excited for releasing in 2025, 2026. There might be some gems in there that you haven't heard of before, specifically indie ones. So if you are interested, subscribe to the $2 tier and you can unlock that. And if you're in the mood to listen to more content about a great indie game, check out episode 41 of the podcast, which is about Cat Quest 3. And finally, Beat Your Backlog. We need your support, and the best way that you can do that for completely free is to leave reviews on the podcast. So if you've enjoyed, please leave us a 5-star review, because that helps new people find us. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.